So tonight is November 8th. This is the Camp Alice Carlton Committee meeting called to order at 6:08. And our guest tonight is Douglas Lapp, Town Administrator, Municipality of Rockland. So let's start with introducing. So this board is comprised of, we have Sandy Cortez, who is also on the Conservation Commission here. Ken Lytle is the treasurer-collector. Eric Dubert is, I guess you'd call, a citizen at large. I'm the town administrator, and we are missing June O'Leary, who is just a long proponent of the town of Whitman, just a general do-gooder. And John Galvin, John Galvin, he couldn't make it, so yeah. So can we start by, I know you've had discussions with Frank Lyon, former town administrator in the past. Yeah. Could you catch us up on?
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah, sure. It was actually really interesting. I knew, known Frank for a bit before this issue came up, and I'm trying to think exactly about how. I don't even know how the issue first came up. I think someone from our open space committee may have tipped us off about it, just saying that, the property might be available sometime, and that's maybe when I was first made aware of it. So I feel like maybe I reached out to Frank. I can't remember exactly, but at any rate, something spurred it. Either he reached out to me, I reached out to him. And so, I became, and it was right around his transition time of leaving. So, he made me aware of it, and we talked a little bit. That's when I want to be a little bit careful because it's all being recorded, but I'll be frank and pardon the pun, Frank, but truthful. There was definitely some bad blood from the prior town administrator in Rockland, I think, and Frank, the way the prior town administrator in Rockland handled things. He, I never met him personally, but I've been, for the past 4.5 years, cleaning things up, so he definitely handled things differently than I do. It was pretty clear from talking to Frank that there was still some bad blood, that the town of Rockland, I think, expressed interest in acquiring the land or maybe accepting a donation of the land, and Whitman wasn't interested in that. And then I think the way I understood it, the Rockland town administrator and his team essentially forced a pilot on Whitman, a payment in lieu of taxes. And in my past experience, pilots were always completely voluntary between both parties, and so I had never heard of one that was sort of forced. And I guess it's a different situation when it's two municipalities as opposed to the normal situation where it's a town and a private party within the town. So I was made aware of all that. So I have the history of it. I think I even went and got a total just because I was curious about how much had been paid to date. I think from the beginning till now it's been over $57,000 that Whitman has paid the town of Rockland. Starting around $1,100 a year, going up to like around $5,500 a year now. So we talked about that a little bit, and I think maybe what tipped us off was maybe when there was discussion about a town meeting article, the disposal, and maybe that was it. So
yep. So I can probably fill in the blank too. So I guess I believe that the town of Whitman was approached by this South Shore Select, yeah. And I think, to the best of my knowledge, that they came forward, and then that just spurred the conversation of, what are we going to do with this land? But I know, I can tell you definitively that it did bother Frank. We've been paying a look. Yes.
And when Frank and I spoke, I always try to be honest, and I was just explaining, the prior town administrator in Rockland is long gone. There's different people here now. But I think there was clearly frustration about the past for him, and so he talked a little bit about how you're having a town meeting warrant article, and we were just gonna we talked about different ideas, donating the land to us buying the land from you selling the land to someone else, all the kind of just different options, and it was going to kind of wait and just sort of see what happens, and that was really kind of the extent of our conversation. It didn't really go much further than that between Frank and I.
Okay, so now I know Select Soccer did sit with Frank, and then I believe
they met with me as well.
Okay, so yes, so can you catch us up on that?
Talk with that. Sure. So they came in. They had a plan.
Right.
And I think they even did. I'd have to look at it. I think they had a wetlands delineation done.
Yes.
So they had a plan, and they were just sort of, kind of feeling us out to see, you know,
Right.
what did we think. And I told him the same thing I'll tell you. I mean, from our perspective, you know, the land is within the town of Rockland, and it's directly abuts a former farm that we just acquired for $900,000 for passive open space. And it was a very high-profile acquisition. We got a big grant from the state, a $400,000 grant, and there was a lot of effort put into acquiring open space. And the vision of our open space committee is to have sort of a green emerald. I forget what the Boston
Ring around
Right.
Rockland.
right?
Yeah.
A similar kind of thing, you know, on a micro level in Rockland. And so, you know, they had identified this piece a while ago as connecting those little puzzle pieces together as a potential acquisition. So I was honest with the group. I said, you know, no one person can have the, you know, unilateral decision over what it is, but there's definitely an interest in that. Obviously, I think the main point I expressed to him was we'd like to acquire it ourselves, so we would have control over what's happening within our town, and we can figure out what the best use is. Understanding though that we don't own it, so that's not our decision, but that would be our goal. We talked a bit about his plan, and I mean, just generally, I get it. You know, I'm a soccer player myself. I have two sons who play, so I've been traveled all over the East Coast going to facilities, so I'm very familiar with them. One concern we would have is, you know, there's a lot of traffic associated with these kinds of facilities, especially it's not just filling up the parking lot for the practice or the game, but it's the transition, you know, when one's ending and the one's starting. And
Right.
so, you know, there's traffic impacts, not to mention just clearing land that would be otherwise passive open space. There's wetlands, so obviously they'd have to, you know, go before a conservation commission. They'd have to go before a zoning board of appeals. I think it would require a special permit. And, you know, I was honest. I said, I'm not sure if the town would support it or oppose it, you know, and there's
Right.
different groups. We had, just for contrast, we had a special town meeting last night where we had three large zoning articles for the Union Point development. And our open space committee was on the floor of town meeting, essentially actively opposing the zoning that the Board of Selectmen and our planning board supported and endorsed that we needed passed. So just to give you a sense of, you know, there's a lot of different, you know, opinions, and I know that our open space committee is going to be very aggressive in wanting to preserve that for open space. Obviously, you know, we know about the history with the pilot. I am certainly willing to talk about that, you know, in the future. And like I said, we would definitely be interested in acquiring it, whether by, you know, gift or, you know, purchase or whatever. I don't think you have authorization to sell it yet, from what I recall.
No. So I you know, I don't want to speak to the board, but I didn't know whether there was an appetite for Rockland to purchase it. I didn't.
I think there would be.
Okay.
Yeah, there's been no formal votes. Like we've had no
Right.
we've had no public meetings about this. The open space committee meeting, our open space committee may have spoken about it. I don't monitor all their meetings.
Sure.
But certainly the Board of Selectmen has never, you know, spoken about it publicly.
Right.
But just from what I know in my role, I can say I think there would definitely be an interest in acquiring it, most likely through our Community Preservation Act. Again, just
Right.
putting those puzzle pieces together. It'll be a little tougher for us because we were able to get this big land grant from the state for the McCarthy farm next door because there was a large 40B housing project that was going in. We had the right of first refusal, so being able to respond to those kinds of developments puts you very high in those lists for grants, whereas something like this probably wouldn't
Right.
be as attractive for a grant, so it probably I'll be on our dime.
Yeah.
We're getting ahead of ourselves. I'm
No,
just
right.
sort of giving you, you know. So I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, Don actually came to one of our meetings.
John Candid. Or,
Yeah. So we chatted with him.
Yeah.
You said on the pilot program you're willing to talk. Would that be in reference to, you said that was voluntary?
Well, no, I guess what I'm saying is if we were talking about like acquiring, you know, the land, you know, sort of would, for example, I mentioned to my chairman that I was coming here and he said, we'll give all the pilot money back if we can acquire the land. So I was just anecdotally referring to something like that. But again, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, and I don't want to rule anything out either.
No. But just curious on you said it was voluntary, the pilot program.
No, what I was saying was, what I was trying to say was, in my experience pilots were always voluntary until I learned about this one. And I think there's a difference when, see, like normally a pilot is you within your town, you have a tax exempt, entity. So if it's a voluntary arrangement, they can agree to pay for certain kinds of services. You can't force a pilot on that entity. But apparently there is a Mass General law, which is why I think you guys have been stuck paying this. When you have one municipality owning land in another, then it's not voluntary.
Also, what happened there is because, I've been an assessor 17 years, and boy, Deb Krupchik came in as assessor, and she started, with all the towns. Abington, we were all like, what?
Right. Yeah,
and it turned out it was Mass General law.
Right, that was new to me too. So I was referring to all the other pilots except for this type.
Right. So, everyone was up in arms, but it turned out it was in ink. And
Right.
yeah,
Right.
so I think, the town of Whitman had been going on along without having that, and then it was like, wait, what is this? So,
Yeah. I think there's a lot of options, right? So there's different, we would obviously like to acquire it. If you kept it, retained ownership, and just left it as open space, and maybe had a restriction on it, that would serve the same purpose, right? And so maybe in that event, there's something we could do as it relates to the pilot, even though there's the Mass General law, but maybe there's something else that could happen.
Oh,
that's good to know, right?
I want to be really open to ideas.
Right.
That's what, yep, that would solve the problem. If we can get this thing tax neutral, there's no reason for the town to get rid of it.
Okay.
And if it's tax neutral, it's not costing anything, we just got to figure out how to come up with funds
Yeah.
to work the land. And then we would maintain it as open space for future generations, as the Carlton family wished, which is the main goal of this, is to make sure we meet the wishes of the family.
Right, because from your perspective, right now, it's costing you whatever, $5,500 a
It is.
year or something
Right.
like that for a
Right.
pilot,
Right. So what maybe this committee doesn't know, and that I do know as far as Whitman, we had an open space and recreation plan in place. It expired in 2005. Now, because of the Peaceful Meadows, so John Hornster of Hornster Farms just purchased our Peaceful Meadows. And so now we are looking to maybe put a conservation or an agricultural restriction on that property. But in order to do so, it was suggested to the town that we form an open space committee and actually get a plan in place.
As
That's
opposed to the
recent.
CPA?
Two different entities.
Okay.
Two different things.
Thank
So you don't have an open space and recreation plan now.
We do not.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend you do that, because like I said, the grant, the $400,000 grant we got from the McCarthy Farm, we had to have a certified plan
That's
in
right.
place. If we didn't, we wouldn't be eligible for that grant. So even just for grant, applications, it's worthwhile.
Right. So my understanding is that is a 2-year sort of process.
Yeah, it takes a while.
Right. So that may play into the property over there as well. Why would it not?
Yeah, so I want to make sure I follow what you're saying. I mean, that would be, I imagine the plan would reflect whatever your desires are for that property.
Yeah, right.
Kathy, I'm sorry, you said we had an open space in place and it expired?
No, so there was an open space plan, and I'm sorry to... Okay, great. So we did have one, and it went from 2005. Okay, so they expire after so many years. My understanding
That's
is
correct.
7 years or 5.
I'm not even sure.
Okay.
I could probably Google it, but for example, ours expires in like another 2 years or something.
Okay.
And it makes sense because the makeup of the town changes in, that type of thing. So the most recent one, let me phrase it, correctly. The most recent one was through 2005.
Okay. Yeah.
So when we were discussing Peaceful Meadows and what we're going to do with that, in working with Old Colony Planning Council, they said, well, you need an open space plan. And so that's also now on my to-do list, is to come up with a committee. Someone suggested this very committee would probably make a good open space.
Why did I feel that rolling right off your tongue, Kathy, before you even came out?
So how do you prevent an open space plan from expiring? Or how do you
cannot.
You can't.
So what do you have to do to renew it? So you have to start from scratch again?
No, you have to update it.
Just
So you
update it?
Oh, just
Okay.
update.
Right, but where the last one was 2005, we
It's-
can't, it's not an
right,
update, it's a
yeah,
redo.
yeah.
But I mean, you can pretty much take it. I'm surprised that it expires. I mean, the goal is open space. It would only expand,
No,
not
but you know,
contract.
if you read so now the, makeup of the town changes.
Yeah.
And this is a survey, it goes out to the people, what do you wish to see? So it's,
Oh,
we have to
okay.
survey the town,
It's the survey. Okay.
you know, that type of thing.
Thank you. Okay.
So,
there's probably technical assistance from the state, whether it's like a community compact grant or.
well, thank you for that, so.
Yeah, I bet you there's a where you could get like a MAPC or I don't know what planning agency.
Well, so the Old Colony Planning, yep, they will commit half the price, and I'm going to petition the Community Preservation Committee for the balance. So that's where we're
That's a good
going
idea.
with that. So that would be coming up at May. But yeah, so this might all incorporate into the whole open space and recreation plan.
Okay.
So that was just brand new news this past week,
Okay.
folks, just so you know.
So, need the plan. Do you know by chance what the zoning is on that land? It's right on the cusp, I think.
I'm going to see if I can look it up.
All right.
I'll see if I can look. I'm virtually certain that it will require a special permit from our zoning board if it were to be used for the active recreation like the soccer complex, if that's where you're going.
Okay, special
I'm
permit.
virtually certain would require a special permit.
What is it zoned as now?
Yeah, I'll have to take a look.
I'm pretty sure it's residential till we get where the Summit Club was.
Let's see if I know where it is. I don't know about you guys, but
That's all right. We can.
55.
you-
My eyes are like.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, mine
No.
happened well before
You can change
that.
it. It doesn't matter what it is because it can be changed with special permit, correct?
Right. I remember what the issue is. There's the parcel. It's in two zones. It's in like this yellow, and like the frontage is blue. So the yellow is R1 residential 1, and then the blue is an R2. So it's two different.
R1,
residential
R2.
zones.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think it's R1 and R2.
It's all
As
residential.
I recall from talking, because I think I even asked the building commissioner as the zoning enforcement officer, like, how would you interpret this? And I'm pretty sure because of the ambiguity of it, it would be special permit for
Okay.
for like a ball field complex.
Okay. Obviously, we all want to see it stay land, but if we were trying to generate revenue to support it, would if we were to lease the 8 acres that South Shore Soccer is looking for, what are the odds of that going through? If you had to guess. I don't mean to put you on the spot.
Yeah, so it's hard for me to say. So, conservation is, and I think you're on the Conservation Commission, right? So, like, I mean, you know better than me. I mean, there's just rules. There's a Wetland Protection Act. It's just so.
Right.
And I imagine they have their consultants that would make sure things were out of the buffer zone
Right.
and all that. So I imagine conservation shouldn't be a problem as long as they have good engineers.
Okay.
So then the zoning is where it gets a little tricky, right? Because they look at impacts and
Yep.
they take into consideration, abutters and I can't say exactly how people would respond to that. I
Okay.
imagine the Open Space Committee in Rockland will vehemently oppose it.
Yep.
How much weight that gets, I can't say. I imagine some of the direct abutters that live there will oppose it because of the traffic concerns, because they live in that part of town for a reason. It's rural and quiet, and so I think the traffic would probably be their main concerns. I don't know if there's lights.
You're talking Beach Street?
Yeah.
Yes, right.
So I don't know if there'd be lights or, whistles for games, those kinds of things. Those would be kind of negative impacts that I imagine people.
Pickleball court.
Yeah, that's noisy, and I know neighbors often oppose that. So I can't speak for them. and
No,
I don't
no,
wanna
no, no.
pretend
That's
Yeah, no.
like I am, but I just imagine so.
Just the obstacles that we might face in the event.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
So if we were to lease it, so because Soccer Select, they're
Social. Commercial recreation,
Yes, so it's a profit-making
yes,
business.
commercial.
So they would be taxed through, you guys would tax, or the state would
Well,
be.
I don't think they're probably tax exempt. They're probably a nonprofit.
I believe that's
So
what
even though
Yeah,
they're
they are
commercial,
nonprofit.
Yeah,
those
yeah,
clubs
that's-
are generally nonprofits. But if you lease them, the town of Whitman is still the landowner anyway. So
we'd collect the revenues
right.
and then we'd pay taxes to you.
But
Would it-
we
would it
would
help-
have to pay, so we would be collecting revenue, then we would pay it to you guys, or?
Well,
the
no, we'd
town
pay it,
Carlton?
the town would own the
still
revenue
would
and
just
then we'd use it to
repile
pay
it from the
taxes
folks,
and
right?
repair the lands and that type of thing and maintain the trails. You could utilize all that,
So, yeah,
so they'd be self-supporting. So that nobody has to take money out of the pocket to support it and it's still a gift to the town and maintain almost 70%.
I'm sorry, Miss,
Yeah, I wasn't following everything. We had a couple of conversations going because what you were talking
Right.
about, I don't know a situation where the town of Rockland would be getting paid revenue.
So, no, we
unless
would be getting paid for that revenue stream.
Yeah,
So, would the state tax us on that revenue?
oh, so you're talking about income taxes
Yes.
as opposed to
Oh.
real estate
Yes.
taxes?
Yes, they're generating,
Okay,
Right.
that's
Revenue.
a different, right, so, yeah,
That would
So
be
is
included
that
in the cost of the lease. We'd cover the costs of the,
right, but that's a separate thing. So we would be making income from the lease.
revenue to the town of
Revenue to
Whitman.
the town.
Right,
But the property is in.
so it's still gonna be the payment in lieu of taxes.
exactly. So, exactly.
So we
I think
would,
you would
whatever
still,
we get would be.
if you did that, you would still pay us. I assume the same
Your
pilot.
50,
right,
yeah, whatever.
I don't know if the pilot would change.
No,
because
I
of
don't
that.
think it would, I think the pilot is based on the valuation of the land, and then the whatever the tax rate is, that's the
But
formula.
would the value
really.
of the land change if you have all these facilities on it that's generating?
Yeah,
income?
that's
So
Yeah.
you folks are the ones
Right now,
who, yeah, yeah,
I would assume the value of the land would change.
yeah,
You're
Yes.
improving it and you're
Right.
generating income.
That's
so
right.
Maybe the pilot would go up to whatever, something
Okay.
higher, but it's still.
No, I just need to know
Yeah.
the
right,
process.
right.
I'm not. Government accounting is not my forte, so.
It would depend on what the tax rate is too.
Right, it changes per, that's the formula, right.
Yeah. Yeah, and assuming that the revenue would at least offset a piece of what the pilot is, but especially as a town that's sort of looking for revenue sources, it's hard to turn them away when they come up. Although this would, I don't know if it would be because I was, when Matt was here from South Shore Select, I was sort of trying to do in my head the money that we get for the leasing and just figuring out, well, if this much per month, this much for your offset. It's something. It's not what we'd be getting from the new marijuana shops, but it's still hard to. It's still hard to.
but they're gonna need a place to go when they smoke, so they go out in the woods and hang. That's something we could probably look at too, is see what they're paying for rent. Because they rent a couple of fields now.
The accountant in me finds it hard to turn away revenue sources when they come up for different things.
Yeah. I don't know, so is there anything further that Mr. Lapp can answer for us?
No.
I think the main thing I would just want to say again, I just want to stress that, I don't want to rule anything out. And so I want you guys to know that we want to be as
Yeah, right,
cooperative and flexible as we can with this. And I really mean that. And I'm a big proponent of sports facilities, and I feel the same way you do. Like, we look for every piece of revenue we can find. Every town needs to do that. So I completely get that. But I would just hope you guys would be sympathetic to the fact that we just invested,
yep,
a significant amount of money
right,
rural part of town for open space, and so
Right.
having that, if this was in like a different part of town, if this was up in the northeast corner of town or something, and that's already kind of an industrial area, fine, go for it, put a bubble over it too, and make it year round, but it's just the location is
right,
Yeah, no, they said they weren't gonna run it year round, they weren't gonna put buildings, they were gonna use porta potties.
Yeah, no.
So it looked like they were trying to go light. At least their presentation to us was on that, with room for tweaks.
Yeah, like no bathrooms, no concessions.
No,
I
Yeah.
don't think either.
I don't think so. I think it was strictly like they'd have mowed fields or whatever, or turf or whatever it was gonna be, and that's it. Nothing, maybe a shed to put the equipment in.
Right, you're correct.
Nothing.
That's what they did present, yep.
2 fields, 1 acres, no buildings, no bathrooms,
fences or
porta
anything like that.
potties.
I mean, one thing I would wonder is, I mean, if you were really insistent that you wanted that kind of active athletic field complex and it could make its way through the regulatory process, can you have the access through Whitman? Go through Whitman so we don't have the traffic on Beach Street.
Yeah, the only access.
Yeah,
Because
That's a
ours is-
negative.
And we have a
ours
cart
is,
path off of Route
conservation
58,
land.
which is
Yeah.
10 feet wide and shrinking.
right.
So,
And
Right.
it's conservation land. I haven't seen it mapped specifically. I'd have to go through our files if we have anything, but
what they did at one point was they put right after you come up past where the fields were, which is housing now, there was a turnaround there for the buses and stuff, so that they didn't go past with vehicles on the wetland areas.
yeah.
So,
I mean, again, I feel like if there was a way for us to, waive the pilot, and maybe even pay you back some of what you paid before or something for you to put a CR on it, I'm sure I could figure something like that out.
Okay.
It might not be the same kind of revenue stream you're looking at with a ball field, but that might be a little bit more of a win-win than something that's
Well, we can
what's
consider,
a CR?
conservation restriction.
conservation
Oh, okay.
restriction. That's just a way of kind of permanently
Yes.
restricting it so it doesn't get
Right.
developed later.
Okay.
Right.
I'm just throwing that out there as an
No,
idea.
that's
I didn't run it
actually-
by an attorney or anything.
No, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Like something that
Well-
might work for both sides.
We're really in our infancy, so we have I think there's a lot of options we need to look at.
Right. That's what we are tasked with.
What about zip lines?
Looking
Get
at
a
all
company
the,
to come in and put zip lines in.
So, yeah.
Take the trees down.
Yeah,
No.
Those are fun.
yeah.
No, some of those trees, 30, 40 years old, they're beautiful.
If Frank was here, I would tell him this, so feel free to mention this to him, but I hope he and whoever else is involved can kind of put the past sort of
Well,
bad blood behind.
I think-
We're trying to operate very differently now, and I've been there over 4.5 years, so.
right. No, that's good. And you know what? It's new blood too. Frank's
Yeah, I was
out.
gonna
We
say,
have new blood in, which
I
is
didn't know how
good.
much,
Yeah. No. I think we were just looking, to speak to him as far
Yeah, we're
as
just trying to
you know,
figure out-
what has. You just don't want to do the same work if he's done X, Y, and Z. We don't want to redo it.
Yeah.
But
it sat for so long, and then suddenly we're going to accept and sell in one breath was concerning.
Right. So do you mind me asking, so you had a town meeting, but that part of the vote, as I recall, that part of the article was amended?
You know what,
Yeah, there were 2 articles
So you
presented.
don't have authorization to sell or lease it now, correct?
Correct. So what happened was the Article 9 from town meeting on,
did it get passed over?
I think
No.
the
it was
part of
Somebody
it.
got,
aggravating people though.
somebody
That's okay.
To see if the town will vote to accept a parcel of land located in Rockland, Massachusetts, and another parcel located in Whitman, known as Camp Alice, Carlton, conveyed to the town in deed dated blah, blah, blah. Furthermore, to authorize, that was section 1, to accept.
and this was last
Oh,
night, right?
oh.
Right,
'cause we
this
had
was the May
not-
meeting.
Right.
And then,
We had not accepted it way back when, so that was a corrective.
Yeah, you corrected the acceptance.
That's right.
and then furthermore, the part B on their part was to furthermore authorize the Board of Selectmen, after compliance with all applicable provisions, Massachusetts, by either selling such parcel to organization for purposes of creating ball fields and or other recreation uses, or take any other action there relative thereto. And that was proposed by the Board of Selectmen. And then one of the citizens presented an amendment to that, and furthermore to authorize the Board of Selectmen after compliance with the parcel located in Rockland as conservation land under the control of Conservation Committee, or take any other action.
So
that
there
was
was
an
nothing about a
amendment.
lease.
That was correct. So then we went back and forth. The lawyer was trying to figure out if we could maintain, if we could have conservation land in another town, which we're waiting to get back on. So at the end of the day, We accepted the land, and that's it.
That's the only
That's
part
what
of
I
that,
thought.
right,
Yeah.
right.
So there was no vote on to lease.
Well,
No.
it went back and forth a couple of times, but yes, no. The
Just during discussions of the article about the lease?
oh yeah, there was quite a bit of discussion.
Go on, yeah.
There was a wonderful presentation made too. Good movie if you can watch it.
That was by yours truly?
Yes, dear.
Yes.
Yeah.
I figured that out.
So that's how it ended.
Okay.
And there are a lot of questions by people in town. One of the things in our town, it's listed as one of the 4 recreational sites, right? We have the Hobart's Pond, we have Harding's Pond, we have Camp Alice Carlton, and we have the town park. And to preserve woodland, we're foolish not to.
Right.
You look at the top of South Ave, I don't know if you've seen that, what used to be all nice, beautiful woods up on Rye Hill. So it looks like an army barracks.
55 Plymouth, yeah.
So, and definitely don't want to see that happen. So,
So we did walk McCarthy Farm
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, and it's,
with no map.
yeah, so
We're here.
it's all new. Like we still need to improve the trails some more and
Yeah,
keep it up. But
yeah. Yeah, we ended up, what was that neighborhood? We ended up cutting these homes back.
oh, Holly Ridge.
We were in Hanson, I think.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
you went to Hanson, yeah. What?
Yeah, we
They
were,
saw land and they ran
we
out.
were lost. That was
We
funny.
were not lost.
No, we weren't. No,
We were at the fishing hole with the old man with the shotgun. You never went out there.
Well, what's cool is, I mean, the properties do abut. So I mean, that trail now
I agree.
connect
Right.
and go all the
Yeah.
way through.
There's a very small corner that it touches on. But it touches enough.
That's
It touches.
all you need.
Touches.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
Because our problem is in Whitman, we're pretty close to the power lines used to run there, and so we're pretty close to. I think we have enough. We could almost get down there. This gentleman in town that has the bottom of the hill. Whatever their name is. At any rate, they have like 60, 70 acres out there. And, if we go with the green and everything else, we maybe could convince them to give us a cart path on the edge of the property, just enough to be able to get up to connect to the Whitman forest. Because we're basically trying to do the same thing on the east end, is green that up as much as possible before it's gone.
Yeah, makes sense. Anything else I can?
No, but thank you for
Greatly
coming
appreciate
out.
you coming.
Yes.
It's literally 10 minutes from Rockland Town Hall, so I'm happy to come
Oh,
anytime.
thank
if you
you.
guys need me for anything else.
Yeah, that's great. We'll keep you abreast of anything that we think
Is there a copying machine here?
I think all the offices are locked
Okay.
at this point.
All right.
How can we help otherwise?
No.
Okay.
I'll can I get your email?
Yeah, here, I'll give you my card.
Oh, beautiful.
They didn't give us
I'll
cards
give you
yet.
a couple of them.
Yeah,
I think the accountant said don't.
What's that?
They didn't give us cards yet, but the accountant,
Thank
yeah,
you.
the accountant wouldn't
Perfect.
release the money.
All right. Can
He's a
you
good man.
go by Doug or Douglas?
Doug is fine.
Doug. Okay, there you go.
Great.
All right.
But I mean, shoot me an email, give me a call anytime. I'm happy to come back.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know you had a late night last night as well, right?
No problem at all.
Yeah.
It all worked
Okay.
out. Nice to meet you guys.
Very nice meeting you. Thank you for your time.
Thanks again.
You got
Okay,
it.
Doug. Take care.
See ya.
Okay.
So when they had the discussion at the town meeting about the lease, was there any,
Sale or lease.
right, but was there dollar amounts associated with the lease? It was just lease, but there's no definitive, there's no language.
It was sell or lease.
Right, but lease details, was there any?
No.
It was just
No,
how
it was all going
sell,
under the control of the selectmen.
and-
Yeah.
And the selectmen would take
The
it.
selectmen were making that decision. And that goes back to '86 when Porter was on, and they did
Yes.
not want the Conservation Committee to put restrictions on the land. And Doug Cole said that they would not sell the land. So there's notes, and I've got to get in and dig through the old history there and find out exact verbiage, because I'm using newspaper articles right now.
Because my concern was in this whole process that, we've discussed our options of selling, leasing, leaving it as is, whatever. But my concern was if the at town meeting, they already, or it was voted down, there wasn't going to be a lease. I didn't know if that took it off the table for us.
No, that was
No,
just
no.
that one vote, and you can always come back to the table,
Okay.
you know.
I just didn't know,
Yeah.
I just wanted to,
The goal was to sell, to accept was part A,
Yeah.
and then part B was to sell or lease. So part B got knocked off, so that can go back up on,
Yeah, it sure can. It
back
sure
up
can.
if,
Yeah.
but there weren't any details,
no.
sale or lease, no details, it was just
No, that all options are
back on the table.
they
Yeah.
sure can be.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
All right.
Because I mean, definitely don't want anything like the lease for the Head Start building where they don't pay a dime, which makes no sense to me. It's like,
When is that lease up, do we know?
I have no idea.
I know. The lease is expired.
Oh, okay. So that means that they can
So
renegotiate?
we're at the beginning stages of renegotiating the lease.
Outstanding. Hey, kick a couple extra bucks in for trail repair, will you? Sorry.
Yeah, right, right,
Not my call anymore.
I'm scraping.
yeah,
All right.
yeah. So how do we feel that went? Did anyone feel like that was valuable? At least he seems, like a negotiator.
Yeah, he wants to work with us to keep it
Yeah, so
obviously.
right.
It seems very reasonable though, and I think once we get something going, we can touch base again.
And I know the goal was to have something set to present for town meeting in May. However, I'm wondering, and I'm just thinking out loud now, is if this open space
Yep.
plan, which we are to be putting forth, that's a 2-year process. So I wonder now, will that affect trying to do something with this property in May when in fact...
There's no one
No.
said we have to do anything by May, right?
Well, so, no, but there's no, that's the vibe though, that, let's
Okay, that's the
deal with
vibe.
this, right.
But I can't, I'm sorry, I don't mean to, I'm not yelling at you,
No,
but
that's okay.
look at this thing has sat dormant, nobody's touched
True.
it, nobody gave a rat ass about it, and now suddenly it's gotta be dealt with, we need to stop.
Okay,
That's
Yeah.
my personal
Yeah.
opinion and view.
Yep, I agree, and especially if this open space, plan is gonna, have a direct impact on it, then,
Absolutely, yeah.
yeah.
And so I said, yeah, we'll go till we get a solution, and that's,
So I have a quick question. So this open space plan, so is there like a definitive, like,
Designation of open space?
a process, a specific process that has to be done to have a plan, to create the plan?
Well, so I believe within the plan you are identifying locations
So you have
within
to-
the town.
So you said, like,
But-
there was a survey before, so are there specific things
Yes.
that have to be accomplished in order to?
That is correct. And and I'm going to be 100% honest, I'm absolutely new to this. So I do know that the beginning or the crux of it and why these plans expire is because you need to go back out then and poll your audience, so to speak. And that's why they expire. Maybe the will of the town changes, or so it is a survey that is being sent to the town asking, what do you want to see done? Bop, 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 beep, beep, beep.
does that go to like people that are renters?
I don't know. I don't know
Or does it
that.
go to the building
Just
owner, with the
landlord.
taxpayer?
Probably just the landlord.
Okay.
Or the
Yeah,
yeah, good question.
So if we had this open space thing, the only open space for us is the Whitman side, not what's in Rockland. Correct?
well, I don't know.
Because
That's
the
one of the
open space
questions.
plan, right, is inside of the boundaries of Whitman.
so that wouldn't apply.
You're-
It only apply to that, and there's already something in place for our piece because it's conservation land.
Okay, so you know what? You're right. Good point by you, Sandy. Let me ask you this. I know little to nothing about what is conservation land, and then by being so identified, what are the implications of that?
So there's wetlands
Okay,
and there's conservation land. So wetlands are wetlands which are identified by vegetation, water, things like that. But then conservation land, you can designate things as conservation land that you can say you can't build on and things like that. I mean, I don't know the exact technical definition, but like we have in Whitman, so there's conservation land next to Harding Pond on Pine Street.
Yeah.
So here's Harding Pond. Going down the hill, there's wooded area. That's conservation land.
Mhm.
Not wet. Well, it can be because...
I was going to say, depends on the time of season.
Yeah. That's conservation land.
so
And then-
is conservation land always in, lockstep with wet? Or not
No,
necessarily?
you can
I don't
have
think so.
conservation land with or without wetlands.
Yes.
Okay.
So
Right.
then there's another piece over, I call it Pine Street Extension. So like I live on Meyer Farm, which is the street
Oh.
next to Harding Pond.
Right,
Okay.
So then there's a subdivision that goes back
Yeah, Hoggy
behind.
built. Yeah.
Yes, that I'll built.
Oh, my goodness.
Anyway, and behind there's a cul-de-sac, one of the things, and it abuts to Abington.
yes.
And behind, I think it's like 2 or 3 houses, there's land. It's conservation land. It's not wet. And that's conservation land.
And so the town so conservation land is owned by the town. Do I have that right?
Yes.
Okay, so it's
And it's under the purview of the Conservation Commission.
okay, and so did I hear you correctly to say that this parcel in Rockland is conservation land?
Part of it is. Well, the part that is in Whitman
Yes.
is conservation wetlands. I haven't been there in a long time, so I'd have to find
I'm around all weekend if you want to go.
the,
Okay. And so, but the determination
But
of,
the part in Rockland, there are wetlands because they did map it when Select Soccer or whatever.
Matt Monroe.
Yep.
Yes, had. So there was flagged wetlands. You can't do anything with that, and the Conservation Commission in Rockland have jurisdiction.
The authority,
of that.
sure.
Yes. And then the rest of it,
Is that why you asked what the zoning was? Or do we know that it's not conservation
That's-
land?
What makes it conservation land? Who designates it conservation land?
well, it's wetlands. So
Right, but-
wetlands are,
Right, that's by the state or fed, right? But who designates land conservation land?
I couldn't tell you that, because like for us, if someone comes before the Conservation Commission, and they're wetlands, so a botanist comes out, they flag the wetlands, and they determine it by a few things, but it's plants, it's the soil, things like that, and that's wetlands. So property owners can have wetlands. You just can't build on wetlands. Usually any of the wetlands that the town owns are conservation. It's just, I wouldn't say both, it goes both ways, but you can have wetlands are wetlands, and then there's conservation land, which, like there's a trail off of Auburn Street.
Yep.
A Eagle Scout redid the path. You can barely see it. You have to look really quick. There's a sign, and it's brown, so it's harder even to
Yeah,
see.
I saw it the other day.
Yeah, so it's, a sign like that has plexiglass to cover it to keep it. They redid it. That's conservation land, but it's not wet. But we own it's owned by that. But for technically wise, I'd have to look up the definition myself because I don't know.
So, and then I have a question too on wetlands. Is that to protect the builder or to protect the earth? Which?
The
Environment.
earth,
Okay,
yes.
Environmental. DEP
It's a
comes
state
in.
thing. You cannot
Okay.
build on wetlands.
Okay.
You can't build within certain.
I didn't know whether it was to protect the building.
No,
No,
It's
not at all.
to
Right.
land. And people get really irate when they find out that they buy land and it's wetlands. Well, it's my land. Well, yes, it is, but you can't build on it.
The government
One.
trumps you.
One, because you really don't want to put anything in wetlands because it's
Gonna sink.
Yes. And two, it's the state.
So we're, okay,
Isn't that what we're doing with the middle school?
doing what?
Building it on wetlands?
So I heard.
It's not wetlands.
So I heard.
That's
Okay,
not
the first one we built there
When-
sunk, so
yeah.
we're gonna go further back into the swamp area and build
It's
again.
not a
It's gonna sink
okay.
further.
One, it's not swamp.
It
And-
was. It was
Well,
wet.
I understand.
It was pretty
might
damn
be,
wet.
It might be wet,
Yeah.
but it's not wet. It's
No,
totally
okay,
different
no, it doesn't
thing.
have the designation. I thought.
So, and just like the DPW building had to come to us because
The-
there's wetlands there. There's nothing, there's no wetlands in middle school. They might be wet.
Yes.
It might
The
not
land
be
is
great.
wet, let me rephrase that.
Yes. It might not be, great soil or whatever, but it's not wetlands.
Okay.
Because the state would never, ever let you build on it.
Right,
I don't care if it's a middle school or whatever.
right.
You can't build on wetlands.
So once it's designated conservation land by whomever, can that designation ever be changed?
I don't know.
Well, that's
I know
the
the wetlands
restriction
you
part.
can't. I mean, once it's wetland, once you can't unwet.
Not drying
The
out.
Yeah,
wetlands,
it's
right.
not. Yeah,
But
especially in
conservation,
Whitman. There isn't. Yeah,
conservation, we don't know if that can be done or undone.
I don't know.
Okay.
It's probably never been undone.
Probably not, but I don't know. I mean,
I'm just curious if
I
you
know,
can.
good question.
Because we're
Right,
gonna-
legitimate
We
question.
want to make sure that,
yeah, because I have no idea because we just deal at the Conservation Commission. We deal with people. They want to build something,
Right.
and if it's within so many feet, well, and then people start getting. It's my property. Then,
Yeah, right,
well,
right.
call Andy down in Middleborough. No, what's it? Not Middleborough. What's down there too?
Lakeville?
Lakeville. Yes, thank you. Lakeville. Let him discuss with you because he's our district guy for the state.
oh, okay. And his name was what, Randy?
Andy.
Andy?
Well, it's Andrew. Oh my gosh.
Do you have a time check, Mr.
Yeah,
Dugan?
it's almost time, yes,
We
ma'am,
have
we
3
got
minutes
3
left.
minutes.
Okay.
Um,
I like
when you
that
get time,
goal.
when you get time, can you can email it or text?
Oops. Because I just had to send him an order of conditions.
That's right, even to try and get this done in a year, we're pushing. There's so much to look into.
There is. And you
So-
know what? I will put that forth to the people who,
There was no time limit put on it when we
You're-
set the committee
you're
up, so,
You're right.
so we own it until
Right.
we're done.
so how does the committee feel to not approve any minutes tonight, but look over the draft and we'll approve them at the next meeting? Is that fair?
Yes.
Great.
And then I'll send out the draft of this one as well, so everybody can read.
Great, I really appreciate you doing it. I
Oh,
don't
yeah,
think I
no,
do
no,
as
it's-
half a good a job as you're doing with it,
So part of the problem is I moved the office down to my father's house, and I've been trying to work from both my house and his house on
Yeah.
the same system.
Yeah.
And sometimes the changes go through, sometimes they don't,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
there's a learning curve there.
Yep.
All right.
Okay, so do we have an idea as far as what the homework is before the next meeting?
You're gonna do that Frank file, and then we can pass
Yeah,
that
and
around?
as far as what has been put forth to legal, is that the crux?
Yeah, we need to, Lucille's daughter, the town lawyer.
Michelle?
Gregory, yeah, Michelle. She was gonna look into further, I think, when we had the town meeting, into the.
Okay, there's probably a file.
I don't know if they pushed it up and said,
Okay.
look into it or
Yeah,
not,
I will
but-
look into it. And so when do we want to meet next, do we suspect? Today is November 8th.
Thanksgiving is up next.
Yeah,
And then,
Should we try to get one meeting in before Christmas or two?
One, I say.
Okay. That's reasonable.
I think so too.
What are we doing, December 6th?
I was just gonna say that, yeah.
Winner, chicken dinner, we all agree?
Yeah,
Wednesday the 6th, 6 p.m.?
What
The
is-
6th
what'd
at
you
6.
say? December
November 6th, December 6th. And it's at 6 p.m.
you know what, I thought, as I think you did, Eric, that he was gonna waive the pilot moving forward.
Well, that's, we that's, he said voluntary, my ears just went right out.
Yeah. Right.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?